how do libertarian politics apply at the state level for the position that you are specifically running for?
At the state level, there's a lot of things that can be done. I mean, obviously, the feds have encroached a lot further than the Constitution would allow, but at the state level, there's a lot of things we can do. I mean, the issues that I've chosen to highlight are drug prohibition, medical freedom, and the economy. And we have a lot of good things about this state. You know, our tax burden is one of the lowest overall in the country. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for improvement. I mean, you know, people's the costs of gas are very high, and if we can, since we're only spending roughly a third of the gas tax on the roads anyway, we may as well cut that by 2/3 and help people out a little bit.
Well, let me ask a question. In this state, any state has needs. I mean, some libertarians, on the far extreme of their party, believe that there shouldn't be any public expenditures. There should be no government who can wrangle any tax dollars out of an individual. Even though our Constitution says that, certainly, public monies can be collected for the most obvious reason, for the construction of post roads. But their expenditure shall be open to the public, and Congress should be able to review them. Here in this state, there are a number of things that are, I believe, realistic government expenditures. The roads, our Department of Public Safety, and so forth. What, in your view, are not reasonable expenditures?
Well, tell me, Joe. Why not privatize the roads? Why not allow private companies and organizations to run the streets? It's been done elsewhere in America, mm-hmm. and it hasn't been disastrous. It tends to be more efficient, and more importantly, it's based on voluntary cooperation between consenting parties. When you get the state involved, then there's always going to be higher costs. I mean, someone's going to be lined up at the trough to take advantage of that. Lobbyists and big business and big labor are all going to get their hands around it and drive up the cost. And the little guy ends up holding the bag.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the largest expenditures that the state has is just its benefits for its elected officials, for its employees, is the cost of health care and just the cost of benefits.
Right.
How would were you to succeed in your quest to become a state rep? What would your approach to that be, to that very large expense?
I would like to see more choices in health care for everyone. I mean, state benefits would certainly benefit from that, but I would like to see us all be able to choose our own provider, whether that's an alternative health care provider or whether that's your local pharmacist. I was reading a biography recently, and a fellow's talking in there. The writer is talking about being a kid and going to the pharmacist and having the pharmacist diagnose some simple ailment and write a prescription, and it got me thinking. That's illegal today. I mean, the AMA has lobbied every state in the union in order to make sure that only the highest levels of education can prescribe drugs, and that's just not always. Libertarians look at every issue as does this increase liberty? Does this allow people more freedom, or does it take away freedom? And I think that the Republican Party, in spite of there being a lot of good people in it, and the Democrats, it doesn't have that kind of a message. It doesn't get people thinking about individual liberty, because that's just not what the mainstream Republicans and Democrats are espousing.
Basically, what people think of as Republican or Democrat is spending issues.
Yeah. I mean, Republicans. People think of Republicans spending less, but the fact is they actually spend more at the federal level than Democrats. But they mix it up with the religious right and with with a lot of
Pro-life
things
and-
that with a lot of things that I just don't see as meshing well with individual liberty. And the Democrats as well, they're good on some issues. They tend to be a little bit more tolerant of other people than the right is, but the Libertarian Party stands consistently for liberty for all sides, civil liberties and economic freedom.
A very good way of bringing that
We got
up.
another question here. This is a classic libertarian question here. It says, how do you feel about legalizing drugs, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, etc.? Many libertarians share a common theme on that subject.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm definitely for legalizing drugs or re-legalizing drugs. As all drugs used to be legal. Prohibition started in the 1930s, and then it really kicked into high gear during the Nixon administration. But there's many reasons for that. I mean, first of all, I respect that everyone owns their own body, and you can do with your own body as you please. Whether that's, you might consider my choice not to wear a helmet a poor decision, but it's my right to make it. In the second place, by making drugs illegal, the unintended consequences are manyfold. I mean, you've got the tragedy of prostitution. Those women who are out there walking the streets are out there because the drugs are expensive. Drugs are only expensive because they're illegal, because there's a black market, which is very, very profitable, and the addicts will pay what they have to. It ends up with theft. It ends up with all those knife point and gun point situations that we hear about in some of the apartment complexes.
So the status of it being illegal is results in more danger than the drugs themselves.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What is the cost to New Hampshire? Any idea about what is the cost of incarcerating?
It costs the state of New Hampshire $32,000 per year per inmate to incarcerate someone.
Any idea how many are incarcerated on marijuana charges or
on drug charges in general? I went to look that up. There weren't that many stats available. I mean, if you look at the federal level, I mean, it's somewhere between the levels of 40 and 60%.
So how are you campaigning now? Or do you have any events coming up? Can you be seen anywhere? If we go by Shop and Save on South Willow on Thursday, will we see Morey out there with a pamphlet?
Well, I'm right now. I'm just beating the streets. I'm walking door to door. I'm trying to meet everyone in my entire district.
Yeah.
I think you might have gotten people excited about making heroin. Your belief that if people are allowed to smoke marijuana, shoot cocaine and whatever, shoot heroin, do all these types of drugs, that somehow the crime rate's going to go down?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm 100% certain of it because it's already been demonstrated. I mean, there's empirical evidence to demonstrate what happened during alcohol prohibition and how the crime rates went up and how the violence went up.
What about in Amsterdam, where I guess marijuana, you can go into a place and smoke it and hang out? I mean, is there any studies based on?
Yeah, they don't have anywhere near the crime.
That's right. Actually, I'm a former resident of Amsterdam.
I want to hear this story. I want to hear this story. This is not going to be a boring show. We've got a guy from San Francisco who moved to Manchester who lived in Amsterdam. I couldn't have written that script. Go for it, my man.
It's actually not that good. I mean, I was transferred there on business, and I lived there for 2.5 years.
Wow.
But during that time, I was able to see firsthand there is just no violent crime to speak of there. You
Other than for a few cartoonists.
Yeah, exactly. There are people coming in who aren't as tolerant, but the Dutch are just fantastic.
Yep.
And the rate of marijuana usage amongst young people is much lower than what ours is here.
Really?
Even though they can walk into any store and get it. Yeah.
It's because it's so available that it's not
a big
it's
deal.
Like when Coors was not available in the Northeast, everybody in the world had to have it, so they would surreptitiously sneak it in, and it was like a big deal. And now that it's legal, it's whoopee-doo.
Right, exactly. So I mean, and there's programs there where hard drugs are not as controlled either, and you just don't see the knifings, the theft, the stabbings. You don't see any of that.
Well, now
it was a great conversation. I appreciate your honesty. Not very many people would come on to a show and talk about the issues that you did so openly, and I hope that people realize that there are a lot of politicians out there that will tell you what you want to hear, not what
Yeah.
they are going to do. And it was a breath of fresh air to have you on. Thank
Morey
you.
Straus, thanks so
Appreciate it.
much. Let's bump Morey out here.
Very.